There is a particular kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much sleep you get. It lives deeper than your bones, older than your memories. It is the exhaustion of a nervous system that learned too early that the world is not safe, that love is conditional, that existing itself requires constant vigilance. You might not remember the exact moment it began, but your body does. It remembers every time you held your breath waiting for a mood to shift, every time you made yourself smaller to avoid taking up too much space, every time you read the room before you could even read words. Emotional safety is not just a feeling. It is the foundation upon which a child builds their entire understanding of existence. Psychologists describe it as the secure base from which a person learns to explore, to trust, to become. When that base is absent or unstable, the architecture of the self develops differently, not broken, but adapted. The child learns to survive in an environment where emotions are unpredictable, where comfort is unreliable, where the people meant to protect them are also the source of fear or neglect. This adaptation happens silently. A child does not consciously decide to become hypervigilant. They simply notice that monitoring the emotional temperature of the room keeps them safer. They do not choose to suppress their needs. They learn that expressing them invites rejection or anger. Over time, these responses become automatic, wired into the developing brain as survival strategies. Neuroscience confirms what the heart already knows. When a child grows up without emotional safety, their nervous system organizes itself around threat detection rather than exploration and joy. The amygdala, the brain's alarm center, becomes overactive. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for emotional regulation and rational thought, struggles to develop its full calming influence. The result is an adult who lives in a constant state of low-level anxiety, scanning for danger even when sitting in a quiet room. The body remembers what the mind has tried to forget. If this perspective resonates, you can support the video by liking it. What does this look like in daily life? It looks like apologizing for things that are not your fault. It looks like rehearsing conversations in your head for hours before having them. It looks like feeling guilty for resting, for needing, for simply existing without being useful. It looks like relationships that feel like tests you are perpetually failing, where vulnerability feels like handing someone a loaded weapon. It looks like a deep, aching loneliness, even when surrounded by people, because you learned early that being seen means being hurt. Adults who grew up without emotional safety often develop what researchers call an insecure attachment style. They may become anxiously attached, constantly seeking reassurance, yet never truly believing it when it comes. Or they become avoidantly attached, convincing themselves that independence is strength when it is really armor against the pain of inevitable abandonment. Some oscillate between both, caught in a dance of desperately wanting closeness while simultaneously fearing it. Comment SAFE if this describes your experience. The tragedy is not just what happened then. The tragedy is how it keeps happening now. Because when you grow up believing that love must be earned, that emotions are burdens, that safety is an illusion, you carry those beliefs into every room you enter. You choose partners who confirm what you already suspect about yourself. You push away the people who offer genuine care because their kindness feels foreign, almost suspicious. You exhaust yourself trying to control outcomes because chaos once felt like the only certainty you knew. There is also the phenomenon of emotional flashbacks, a term coined by psychologist Pete Walker. unlike regular flashbacks that involve visual memories. Emotional flashbacks are sudden floods of feeling disconnected from any conscious memory. You might be having an ordinary day when suddenly you are overwhelmed by shame, fear, or hopelessness that seems to come from nowhere. But it is not from nowhere. It is your nervous system reacting to a present trigger that resembles a past wound, a tone of voice, a facial expression, a moment of perceived rejection. The body responds as if the original threat is happening again right now. Type YES if this helped you understand something about yourself. Children who grow up without emotional safety also learn to become emotional caretakers for others. They develop an uncanny ability to read moods, to sense what others need, to manage the feelings in the room. This hyper-empathy is both a gift and a burden. It allows them to connect deeply with others' pain, but it also means they absorb emotions that are not theirs to carry. They become the friend everyone confides in, the partner who always adjusts, the employee who never complains. And beneath that, generosity is often a quiet desperation to be needed, because being needed feels like the only reliable path to being loved. The impact extends into the relationship with the self. When a child's emotions were dismissed or punished, they learn to dismiss and punish those emotions in themselves. Anger becomes something shameful to suppress. Sadness becomes weakness to hide. Even joy can feel dangerous, as if being too happy invites the universe to balance it with pain. This internal silencing creates a fractured sense of identity. The adult knows they feel something, but they cannot always name it or trust it. They second-guess their own perceptions, wondering if they are overreacting, too sensitive, too much. Research on adverse childhood experiences confirms the long-term effects. Adults who experienced emotional neglect or instability in childhood show higher rates of anxiety, depression, chronic health conditions, and difficulties in relationships. The stress of growing up without safety literally alters the body's stress response systems, leaving them more reactive and less able to return to baseline calm. If someone you know might benefit from this, feel free to share it. Yet, amid this heavy inheritance, there is something that must be said clearly. Understanding where these patterns come from is not about assigning blame. It is about reclaiming power. Because once you see how your past shaped your present, you also see that the future is not predetermined. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections, means that healing is possible. It is not easy, and it is not linear, but it is real. Healing begins with the simple, radical act of noticing. Noticing when your body tenses for no apparent reason. Noticing when you apologize reflexively. Noticing when you are performing instead of being. Each moment of awareness creates a small gap between stimulus and response, a space where choice can enter. Therapy, particularly approaches that address trauma and attachment, can provide the safe relational space that was missing in childhood. In that space, the nervous system can begin to learn that vulnerability does not always lead to pain, that needs can be expressed without punishment, that emotional safety is not just a childhood myth, but something that can be built in adulthood. If this gave you clarity, comment "healing" below. The wounds of growing up without emotional safety run deep, but they do not define the entirety of who you are. You are also the resilience that kept you alive through those years. You are the strength that learned to protect a fragile heart. You are the sensitivity that refused to become numb, even when numbness would have been easier. The same nervous system that learned fear can learn trust. The same heart that learned to hide can learn to open again. Not quickly, not perfectly, but genuinely. If this exploration gave you insight into your own story, like the video, what is one way you are learning to create safety for yourself now? And if you want more reflections on the psychology that shapes us, subscribe to this channel where we explore the quiet truths that live beneath the surface of our lives.